the Balkans. For those who followed the Whistlerverse for some time, I did not come up with that name, you may already be quite familiar with this part of southwestern Europe for a slew of, well, not very cheerful reasons. A 20th century history which began with the First and Second Balkan Wars, followed by the Second World War, the uneasy peace of the communist era, and finally the Yugoslav Wars, has allowed for episodes which don't really paint the region as the epitome of coexistence. But the Balkans are also home to some of the most extraordinary places anywhere on the European continent, and which fall somewhat under the radar of common discourse about the region. So, well, today we're going to take a look at some of the most colourful of those, their features, their history, and everything that makes them quite so unique. And a quick disclaimer here, obviously these places are not really undiscovered. Indeed, many are both well known and renowned to locals and foreigners alike. We just needed you to click on the video. I mean, we are going to deliver, so don't worry. The entries included on this list are therefore either places less well known than others nearby, or which have distinguishing personality traits, perhaps not known to all. Of course, the magic of some of these places aside, the Balkans are still the Balkans, so most of these places are equally defined by a local population struggling to just get along. Let's have a look, shall we? Alright, kicking things off deep in the middle of the Western Balkans and on the sun-kissed coast of the Adriatic Sea lies the small nation of Montenegro. I went there last year, actually. Very beautiful. In terms of population, Montenegro is, by some margin, the smallest country in the Balkans. This is despite the country not being geographically the smallest at 13,000 square kilometers. Montenegro's area ranks a little larger than the region's other territorial minnow. Its partially recognized neighbor Kosovo, which has a territory of a little less than 11,000 square kilometers. Despite that, Kosovo's population is no less than 3 times that of Montenegro's, which stands at only 600,000 people. But despite being a small nation, Montenegro is certainly not shy of charms. Its location in the rugged mountains of the Western Balkans offers a range of distinctive natural features, such as the Lipa cave system, dramatic mountain peaks like Zlakalata and Bobotov Kuk, and rich lakes like Piva and Bargrad. Among its most renowned man-made structures is the Serbian Orthodox monastery of Ostrog, carved into a cliff face in central Montenegro, which is a popular site for pilgrimages and civilian tours alike. But undoubtedly, another of its greatest riches is the historic southwestern city of Kotor. Kotor lies a little further along the Adriatic coast from the Croatian city of Dubrovnik, which is renowned for being a tourism hotspot and for its distinctive Dalmatian architecture. Kotor isn't a whole lot different, and were it not for its neighbour, it may itself have been considered the jewel of the Balkan Adriatic coast by itself, and perhaps even have replaced Dubrovnik as the set for King's Landing in the HBO series Game of Thrones. There you go. Like many other places in the Balkans, Kotor was influenced by the Romans, the Byzantines, and the Ottomans, but it is the Italian influence on the city which looms largest, with the city having been ruled by the Venetian Republic for almost 300 years until the 18th century as part of its Venetian Albania province. The city's many attractions include its old town, its centuries-old churches, the picturesque Kotor Bay, and the surrounding mountain massifs, part of a range known as the Dinaric Alps. Its Italian influence is visible in the town's architecture, especially its Baroque or Romanesque churches and its narrow streets and alleyways. The rebuilt Cathedral of St. Tryphon, built in 1166, stands as an example of this influence, as well as the city's resilience having been flattened, like the rest of Kotor, by earthquakes in 1667 and 1979. Another of Kotor's most iconic features is the fortification wall, which rises 260 meters to the fortress of San Giovanni. The climb to the top, via more than 1,300 stone steps, offers sweeping views of Kotor Bay, often called one of the most beautiful natural harbours in all of Europe. And it isn't the only iconic stone structure nearby. Lying in the bay is Our Lady of the Rocks, an island featuring a small church of the same name, which was created by sinking a big pile of rocks and a few pilfered ships into the harbour to create a platform. It has since become a local custom to throw rocks into the sea every summer to replenish the island's structural support. But there is a less than pleasant flip side to Kotor's idyllic location. It sits squarely within the active seismic zone, which, as mentioned, blitzed the entire region in one swoop in the spring of 1979. This resulted in more than 100 deaths and devastated much of the city's prized features. Only a little more than a decade later, the Yugoslav Wars shook the surrounding region. Montenegro was crippled by the economic sanctions leveled upon Yugoslavia, a fact which did little to remedy the devastation of the earthquakes that Kotor was still at the time recovering from. By the start of the 2000s, the city and surrounding region was severely economically underdeveloped. And being located at the mouth of a ford has come with another difficulty specific to airplane pilots, trying to figure out how to land in the Tivat International Airport a few kilometers west of Kotor. The airport has a single asphalt runway situated squarely between two surrounding peaks. If pilots do not navigate their approach correctly, they risk flying themselves and their payload headfirst into the Bay of Kotor. For this reason, Tivat has been nicknamed the European Kai Tak after the larger airport in Hong Kong that was renowned for a similar reason. Today, Kotor is known for its vibrance, its heritage, and its cultural and music scene. The generation of a tourism industry since the start of the 2000s has helped reverse the economic destitution caused by the wars of the previous decade. And happily for Kotor, it experienced little direct violence during the turbulence of the Yugoslav wars, unlike Dubrovnik, which suffered a ruinous 7-month siege in the course of the same conflict. Unfortunately, Dubrovnik's fate was one which closely resembled that of the next entry on this list, located a little further north in today's Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, once again, and perhaps most of all among the entries on this list, Mostar cannot really be described as undiscovered. With a resident population of a little over 110,000 and no less than 1 million visitors in 2024, it is a thriving town and tourism hub nestled in the hills of southern Bosnia and in the ethnically mixed sub-region known as Herzegovina. It features regularly on must-visit websites regarding the Balkans and is a priority destination for tourists traveling to Bosnia. But the first thing about Mostar is how, without a car, to actually get there. The city has an airport, although with a grand total of 2 year-round destinations, it is far from an international hub. Aside from flying year-round to only Zagreb and Belgrade, the Mostar International Airport is also located 8 kilometers outside of the city and not connected by any regular public transportation. This leaves the most effective means of connection being to either hitch a ride or walk. But another option is to reach the city by bus from Croatia or elsewhere in Bosnia, or by taking one of Europe's most extraordinary train journeys, the Sarajevo-Ploče route, which connects Mostar with the capital through a sequence of lakes, forests, and the majestic Dinaric Alps. And if you do succeed in making your way to the city, what you'll be met with is a sight little short of breathtaking. Mostar is divided into historically Christian and Muslim districts, connected by the central starry mosque, or Old Bridge, which is perhaps the most well-known feature of this city and to which Mostar owes its name. East Mostar is generally held as the traditionally Bosniak or Muslim riverbank, complete with bazaars, mosques, Ottoman-style coffee houses, and where the drone of the muezzin, the Muslim call to prayer, can be heard daily. West of the bridge sits the traditionally Croatian Catholic side of Mostar, complete with churches and neo-Renaissance architecture, and where the ring of church bells competes with the muezzin call from the other side of the river. Other defining features of the city include the Tekke, or Shrine of Blagai, previously home to a brotherhood of dervishes belonging to the Sufi order of Islam. The shrine is located around 12 kilometers outside Mostar city and is known for its picturesque appearance and the crystal-clear caustic spring water which runs through it. Other nearby attractions include the majestic Krivitska waterfall, nicknamed the Niagara Falls of Bosnia, as well as the Catholic pilgrimage site at Medjugorje, less than an hour's drive from Mostar in the mountains of southern Herzegovina. But being a divided city, Mostar was by no means spared the ravages of the Yugoslav wars. The fighting began in 1992 after Bosnia declared its independence from Yugoslavia, and for a time, the Croatian Defense Council and mostly Bosniak army of the Republic of Bosnia fought together against the Serb-dominated Yugoslav People's Army for control of the city. This resulted in a Croat-Bosniak victory, but they then proceeded to fight each other and reduced what remained of Mostar to little other than a pile of rubble. The Starry Mosque was perhaps the most well-known casualty of this period, having been blown up by Croatian forces in 1993. Much of the rest of the city was equally as devastated, and around 2,000 people were killed. But with time, the city and its features have slowly recovered. 11 years after its destruction, the new Starry Mosque was finally unveiled in 2004, following an international reconstruction effort, and with the aid of funds donated by Italy, the Netherlands, Turkey, Croatia, and others. The new installation replaced the lonely rope bridge which had connected the two halves of the city in the time between, and portions of the old bridge were lifted from the Neretva River below, although most were too damaged to be reused. Today the city is, like Kotor, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the traces of the ruinous war are fading. They haven't gone away entirely, however, and some parts of the city still feature bullet holes, debris, and memorials to the past. A War of Genocide museum was unveiled in East Mostar in 2018 in memory of those, chiefly Bosniak civilians, slaughtered during the fighting. Moreover, the divisions in Mostar and the surrounding area continue to be thinly visible in other ways. Local politicians or groups will ostentatiously display their ethnicities on posters in the run-up to elections. Even integrated schools have reported signs that social divisions continue to exist between their students along ethnic lines. And that lingering social division is perhaps even more present in football, which is Bosnia-Herzegovina's most popular sport. Mostar, despite its size, is known to be a footballing powerhouse, and no fewer than 4 of the 10 clubs in Bosnia's top division are based in Mostar or nearby, including FK Velej Mostar and HSK Zrinski Mostar, as well as HSK Posusay and NK Shiroki Brejik. Are you putting these names just to torture me, writer? Philip, bye! 2 clubs based in small towns to the west of the city. The ethnic aspect of 3 of these clubs is rather evident even at a glance, given the unmistakable Croatian checkerboard which adorns the badges of Zrinski, Posuye, and Široki Brijeg. Alike, again, with the bloody... That's not a word! And to eliminate any further doubt, HSK translates to Croatian Football Club, leaving the ethnic undercurrent of their club cultures as clear as could be. So, how does friendly sporting rivalry reflect the local ethnic relations? Well, not very harmoniously. Mostar's centerpiece football stadium is the Brajeli Brijeg, which until 1992 was the home of Velej Mostar, a club mostly supported by local Muslim Bosniaks. But the stadium sat west of the river in Croatian Mostar, and Velej were kicked out of their home almost as soon as the war began. They were replaced by Zrinski, technically Mostar's oldest football club, but which had been banned since 1945, however competed in the Ustashi-run Croatian domestic league. Zrinski were refounded amid the chaos of the war and quickly occupied the Bijeli Brijeg Stadium, involuntarily vacated by Velej. They have not budged ever since, despite lengthy campaigns by various groups to return the stadium to their rivals. And while ethnic rivalries may not have quite the same level of business to them in the next entry on our list, they do still exist, albeit in a much more confusing way. Have you ever heard of Enver Hoxha? If not, don't worry, we've actually devoted an entire video to him on our sister channel Into the Shadow, so check it out if you've got a chance. It's a good one, if we might say so ourselves. But this entry is not about the central figure of communist Albania and the first secretary of the Stalin fan club. Instead, it is about the town he came from. Gjirokaster is known as a gem of southern Albania, located close to the border with Greece. The town is known for its distinctive architecture, especially its fortified tower houses, or kulis, which serve as both residences and fortresses for wealthy families throughout the town's history. Similarly renowned is the Gjirokaster's fortress, the gargantuan 12th century complex looming over the city at a height of 300 meters above sea level, which offers a panoramic view of both the old town and the rolling hills which envelop the region. And much like Mostar, Gjirokaster also boasts several nearby religious treasures. The Tekke of Milani, one of the most renowned Muslim shrines in Albania, sits in the hills above Gjirokaster and remains a pilgrimage site for adherents of the Bektashi sect from Albania and abroad. Also nearby are several current or former Christian monasteries, many of which belong to the Greek Orthodox tradition. And the Greek connection is important because Gjirokaster has long been considered a center of Albania's ethnic Greek minority. The only issue is that nobody can quite agree how many Greeks actually live there or whether they are actually really Greek at all. We're not making that up. The most recent Albanian census in 2023 found there to be a little under 24,000 ethnic Greeks living in the entire country, or less than 1% of the population. But Omanoia, an organization representing ethnic Greeks in Albania, disagreed slightly, declaring that the Greek community represented no less than 10% of the entire population of Albania and a total of almost 300,000 people. Their claim would seem outlandish, but accurate figures were muddled by Albania's previous censuses, which were seen as full of inaccuracies. The 2001 census, the first since the end of communism, was boycotted by the Greeks and ethnic Macedonians, who complained that their identities weren't even available as a choice on the questionnaire. In addition, around 14% of the population refused to state their ethnicity on the 2011 census, on which the selection was widened, but not made compulsory. And a chief clouding issue is also that the population of southern Albania is mostly Greek Orthodox, in contrast with the rest of the country, which is nominally Muslim, Catholic, or non-religious. It has been alleged, at least by Greece, that many of those Greek Orthodox Albanians may simply be ethnic Greeks, linguistically Albanized, or a little bit unsure as to how exactly to call themselves. Ironically, this would be consistent with the opinion of the Ottomans, who ruled Albania for more than 400 years, and rather lazily declared that all who self-identified as Greek Orthodox were automatically considered Greek. But on the other hand, some modern scholars have contended that the Christian locals of Gjirokaster are Albanians who have always been Albanians, and are simply partial to pretending to be Greek to be eligible for a prized EU passport under Albania and Greece's dual citizenship laws. Anyway, ethnicity to one side, the town of Gjirokaster has a long and rich history. The first recorded mention of the town dates back to the 14th century in the late Byzantine era, when it was known as Gjirokaster, Greek for silver castle. The town was occupied by the Ottomans soon after, and Albania gradually transitioned from a predominantly Christian nation to a predominantly Muslim one, largely due to the Ottoman-infused system of forced conversions to Islam and movement of peoples. The Ottoman period also saw the rise of Bektashism, a Sufi branch of Islam, which remains significant in Albania today at around 10% of the Muslim population and 5% of the population at large. However, the religious balance in Albania was redressed once again during communism, during which religious practices were outright banned, leading to the closure of mosques, churches, and shrines alike. The ban was introduced by none other than a son of Gjirokaster, Enver Hoxha, who took power in 1944 and introduced the blanket ban in 1967. It remained in place for 6 years beyond his death in 1985, before religiosity was reintroduced in 1991. Perhaps as a result, relatively low levels of religious devotion have continued in Albania today. And since you might be wondering, Enver Hoxha was a lot of things, but he definitely wasn't Greek. His first name was attributed to Enver Pasha, the Ottoman Turkish military officer and war criminal seen as responsible for the butchering of Greeks, Assyrians, and Armenians during the late Ottoman massacres of the First World War. He seemed to put his heritage to one side, however, and went about enthusiastically persecuting all religious groups equally throughout his 41-year reign. But either way, today's Gjirokaster is realizing its potential as an evolving tourism hub, with tourists flocking to experience the ambience of its cobbled streets, traditional bazaars, Ottoman mosques, and various natural features. In 2024, the town was visited by over 700,000 domestic and foreign tourists. And although ethnic divisions in Gjirokaster do exist, generally, they do not have quite the same bite as in other places in the Balkans. Places like the city of Mitrovica in Kosovo. The contested territory of Kosovo is home to a series of unique charms. These include some of the most emblematic sites of the Serbian Orthodox Church, including the monasteries of Gračanica and Visoki Dekani, as well as the Church of Our Lady of Javis in the southern town of Prizren. Several significant Muslim sites exist also, such as the Ottoman-era Sinan Pasha Mosque, also located in Prizren, and the Sultan Mehmed Faith, or Imperial Mosque, in the largest city of Pristina. Kosovo's population is overwhelmingly Albanian, and although the territory declared independence in 2008, its status remains disputed, being recognized by a total of 108, or a little over half of all UN members. The remainder largely consider Kosovo a region of Serbia, which it was for 250 years before Ottoman conquest in the 15th century, and again from 1912 until its declaration of independence in 2008. The dispute over Kosovo has been nothing short of bitter, being the subject of a brutal war in the 1990s and a low-level conflict and periodic threats of renewed fighting in the time since. With Kosovo holding many key sites belonging to the Serbian Orthodox Church and being the site of the most significant Serbian battle against the Ottomans in 1389, the religion possesses huge symbolic importance for Serbia, and relations between Belgrade and the Kosovo administration have remained consistently woeful. The divisions engendered by the conflict remain markedly present, perhaps nowhere more so than in the divided northern city of Mitrovica. Mitrovica is today effectively divided into two towns, two communities living adjacently but separately on opposite ends of the new bridge, alternatively known as the Ibar Bridge or the Austerlitz Bridge, which straddles the Ibar River. South of the bridge lies the much larger Albanian Mitrovica, where the locals fly Albanian or Kosovar flags, where the dominant language is Albanian, and where the largest religion is Islam. Also common to see flown is the flag of the United States, owing to the US-led NATO intervention in the Kosovo War in 1999, held as preventing a then-looming repeat of the massacre committed by Serbs in Bosnia a few years before. Like the rest of Kosovo, South Mitrovica uses the euro as its official currency, despite the state never having been admitted to the European Union. But while South Mitrovica is around 99% Albanian, what lies across the Ibar River is a different story altogether. You see, by crossing the bridge, you'd find yourself in North Mitrovica, one of the few remaining Serbian enclaves in Kosovo. Here, the residents are overwhelmingly Serbian, and the Serbo-Croat language is spoken. Serbian and often Russian flags are prominently on display, and the dinar is the local currency, although Kosovar authorities have increasingly prohibited its use amidst a string of other recent massacres restricting Serbian institutions in the region. The area around Mitrovica is known for its natural beauty, being surrounded on all sides by a sequence of rolling hills and valleys, and the city itself is home to some significant features of its own which largely reflect the divided nature of its society. It houses the Serbian University of Pristina, which relocated to Mitrovica after the Kosovo War and the splintering of the University of Pristina into Albanian and Serbian-speaking faculties. A significant structure in South Mitrovica is the Isa Beg Mosque, built in 2014 using funds, like many recent mosques in the Balkans, from Turkey. Also located nearby are the Rashan Fortress, built during the Byzantine era in the 5th century, and the Zvekan Fortress, built even earlier in the age of classical antiquity. But relations are hardly harmonious. The Abar Bridge is open to pedestrians, but in practice it's closed to traffic, being obstructed at the Serbian end and permanently monitored by guards from KFOR, NATO's Kosovo-based peacekeeping detachment. Kosovo Serbs generally boycott all that relates to Kosovo state institutions, including the use of the euro, municipal elections and censuses, which has made estimation of the total number of Serbs living there difficult. Kosovo, for its part, has attempted to smother Serbianness by prohibiting Serbian car registration plates, circulation of the dinar, and even briefly electing Albanian mayors to Serb enclaves after locals boycotted the elections. In 2013, some hope for the divide to be resolved seemed to be on the horizon with the signing of the EU-brokered Brussels Agreement. The agreement would provide guarantees for the Serb communities of places like Mitrovica and normalize relations between Serbia and Kosovo. But Kosovo failed to ratify the agreement in the time since, and relations remain, well, just as bad as ever. Okay, so let's move a little south to the small country of North Macedonia. And North Macedonia is, well, a bit of a difficult country to pin down. For one thing, in a similar way to Kosovo, not everybody even agrees that it should exist. Greece has long opposed the country, naming itself Macedonia, believing this to be a sort of grift, an unsubstantiated claim to the historical legacy of ancient Macedonia and figures like Alexander the Great. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the decision by Skopje to name its principal airport quite literally after the same historical figure did nothing to improve relations, and Greece continued to block its neighbours' accession to either the EU or NATO until the country renamed itself North Macedonia in 2019. Meanwhile, Bulgaria has long disputed the validity of the Macedonian ethnicity, insisting that the Macedonians are nothing other than a subgroup of the Bulgarian people themselves. Quite a lot of heat for a country with only about 1.8 million people. But what everyone agrees, at least, is that it definitely is a Balkan country. Happily, unlike many of the others, Macedonia's diverse population lives side by side in peace and harmony. But no, they don't, because that's a lie. Ethnic minorities within North Macedonia have criticized the state for undercounting their numbers in recent censuses. The Albanians are by far the largest of these at around a third, and according to some, perhaps even half of the country's entire population. Some ethnic Albanians have long advocated for a greater Albania, whereby Albanian majority regions in the country's west and north, along with Kosovo, would become part of a wider Albanian state. A 6-month insurgency by Albanian separatists in 2001 led to significant instability and several hundred deaths. But all that to one side, another thing Macedonia shares with its Balkan neighbours is a treasure trove of rugged beauty and historic cities, and one of its jewels is undoubtedly the lakeside city of Ohrid in the country's southwest. Ohrid is renowned for its labyrinth of cobblestone streets, whitewashed houses with wooden balconies and ancient stone walls. Like many other cities described, it has its own fortress, Samu's Fortress, which offers sweeping views across the lake towards Albania on the western shore. Of course, one cannot imagine this was much use when the Ottomans invaded from the east and made the region one of its first Balkan conquests in 1395. But Samu's fortress retains its imposing stature and panoramic views to this day. The city is also renowned for its many churches, leading to the nickname the Jerusalem of the Balkans. The city is said to have once had 365 churches, one for each day of the year, though many of these met their end during the 500 years of Ottoman rule. Even so, dozens of beautifully preserved medieval houses of worship remain, such as the Church of St. John at Caneo, perched dramatically on a cliff overlooking the shimmering lake. The church's picturesque setting has made it one of the most photographed spots in all the Balkans. Lake Ohrid itself is one of Europe's oldest and deepest lakes, estimated to be over 3 million years old, and is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site shared between North Macedonia and Albania. Its crystal-clear waters and pebbled beaches attract numerous visitors, enticed as much by the lake as by the cobbled streets and historic buildings of the city of Ohrid itself. And the city was not even touched by the instability of the 1990s, the fall of Yugoslavia, and the brief insurgency in the early 2000s. So while North Macedonia may have been one of the countries to remain longest under Ottoman rule, it was spared the more recent period of utter devastation to strike the Balkans, so at least there's that. Thank you for watching.